Hi, this is Stevie. Someone recently asked me about gouache and how it's used, and this video is going to show you how I use gouache to fix problem areas in my paintings. Gouache is opaque watercolor, and you can buy complete sets of gouache paint, but I like to use just the Winsor & Newton white gouache, and then I mix it with my other watercolors to match colors. And I'll show you that in the demonstration. This is a painting that I had done in a class with Ray Andrews, and I had way too much dark paint all over that green area on the painting. It was too dark, and of course, since it's a watercolor, there was nothing I could do to lighten it. So I decided to switch to gouache and fix it with that. Here I'm just showing you, I have a bunch of gouache paints that I purchased. These are the Michaels house brand Artist Loft, and they're okay. I like to use just the white Winsor & Newton gouache and mix it with my watercolors because then I can closely match the colors that are already on my watercolor painting. The tube that I'm holding up right now is acrylic gouache, and I've never used acrylic gouache. I'm not even sure why I have it, but what I do know about it is that it's different from the traditional gouache in that it can't be moved once it's applied, just like acrylic paint. Once it's on your paper, it's on the paper to stay. The other thing that I worry about is that it might be a little shiny on your paper like acrylic paint is. So I don't use it. I just use the regular gouache. So now I'll show you how I used gouache in this painting. I had that really dark area all along the top of the painting, just all dark green. It looked just like the other green areas behind the bars, and I needed to break that up, and since it's watercolor, I couldn't lift out that color, so I had to do something to go over it. So I pulled out my white gouache, and I decided that I would add some lighter colored leaves, some light green leaves to the painting to break up that color. So I got out my Winsor & Newton white gouache, and then I needed to decide on a color that I was going to use, and I had two colors in mind. That first color, I don't remember the name of it. It's a Daniel Smith color, but I decided to go with my Grumbacher Academy phthalo yellow green because I've used that before, and I know it's a really bright color, and especially when you mix it with a little bit of white. Now I squeezed out a lot there, and I certainly didn't need that much, so and you can't preserve it once you squeeze it out, so just don't put too much out all at one time. You can always add to it. So I squeezed out the white and then added the green to it to get the shade that I wanted, and then I went ahead and I'm just scumbling in the strokes to make it look like leaves, and I switched over to my dagger brush because it's a nice floppy brush where I can really kind of dance it around the painting, and silver brush makes that brush, and I really like it. I love it for doing foliage. So I just scumbled it around, and you can see that it looks lighter than the color that's already on the painting, and it may stay a little bit lighter, but you should know that gouache tends to darken a little bit when it dries. So if you're trying to match a color that's already there, just keep that in mind. Maybe try it on a separate piece of paper to see how it looks. So I just continued on. I decided to go ahead and add a little brighter color to the leaves on the pots in the front as well. So I'm just going back doing that, and that helps to separate those leaves from each other, make it a little more noticeable in the painting. And then I also decided that I wanted to get a little more color on the flowers in those pots. So here in just a moment, I'll mix up some red color to do that. So that is Anthracnoid Scarlet that I have for a red. And I wanted to be careful and not add too much of the white gouache to it because it'll tend to turn pink. Another thing you can do when you're highlighting red flowers is rather than to add white to the red, you can use an orange color. I could have taken my orange and maybe added a little bit of white to that, and that makes a nice highlight on the red flowers as well. I just didn't think about it at the time. So there you have it. That's how I worked on that painting. And here's another example of a smaller painting. And I really like my sunflower in this painting, but I don't like how dark all of those leaves are around the right side of the flower. And I put the photo, a scanned photo of that piece in the upper right of the screen because for the piece that I'm working on, I guess it's the lighting, the background doesn't look all that dark, but it really is dark if you look in the upper right, in the photo in the upper right. So here I'm just strengthening the center of the flower a little bit with some more of my transparent burnt orange, and then I added a little bit of purple to that burnt orange as well to get it really dark. And I'm just applying that around the center of the flower, and then I'll bleed that out with some water just to soften it. But notice that I will preserve the white center where you see the little white dots in the center. I wanted to be careful not to destroy that as I go back and put more color on. And that really calls attention to the center of the flower. So I'm just kind of spreading that out a little bit. I don't like any hard edges around the centers of my flowers, so I like to pull out some of the color just to break up those edges. So now I went in with a mix of my Antwerp blue and my transparent burnt orange. First I was just applying water to the areas where I was going to paint. So I took that mix, which makes a nice bluish green color, and I wanted to get more dark color right up against those petals, not all over. So you'll notice that I apply the color right next to the petal in those little V-shaped areas. Then I go back and clean my brush and just pull it out with some clear water so that the darker color stays right by the petal. And that helps to define the petals and just make them stand out more against the background. So I wanted to get all of that work done before I added any of the lighter color. So I'm just going around the painting doing that. There's one area there on the lower right where I wanted to add a little more color because I wanted to indicate a leaf in that area. And I don't like to paint leaves. I don't put many of them in my paintings. Instead, I like to just suggest them. And I'll show you in a few minutes how to do that. Just mixing up more of that same color. That was Antwerp blue and transparent burnt orange. And there I got some really dark color in around to emphasize that petal. And you can see what a change that makes in bringing that petal out when you add that dark color. But you really want to avoid pulling that dark color all the way out to the edges because it will just overtake your painting. And that's why I wanted to get more of a lighter color in there as well in that background. So just blending that out, making sure that I got the dark color in the areas that I wanted that in. Now I'm going back and trying to figure out which color I can add to the background to make that, to brighten up that background, make it look a little lighter. And so what I settled on was my green gold, which is a transparent color, and several manufacturers make that color. And I added some of the white gouache to my green gold, which gets it a really light color. That's it there on the left where I was, right there where I was mixing. And so now I'm applying some of that green gold in different areas. In the area where I know I'm going to make a leaf or suggest a leaf, and then going around the painting, just brightening up those darker areas in the background. And look already at what a difference that makes. It's just so much more pleasing to look at with that bright color back there in the background. Just not as boring as that dark color. And it's really subtle. It's not a big change, but it really does help to brighten up this painting. And I always like to leave some white areas too. And so it just gives your painting a little breathing room. So I tend not to cover every square inch of a painting with color. Notice how I put a darker green mark under that section where I made a leaf. I'm suggesting leaves with negative painting, by painting around the leaf with that dark color. And I soften that. I don't want it to be a hard line, but I soften the edge of it a little bit. But even just by suggesting that one side of the leaf, you know that's a leaf without painting the whole thing. So here's the finished piece. I've gotten the light green color around the flower in the background, and I think it's really done a lot to help brighten this little painting up. I hope this tip has been helpful for you, and thanks a lot for watching.